Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ursula Bielski, and this is Uncanny Catholic, where we look at everything in God's beautiful world that is a little supernatural at times. And whether you're Catholic, another Christian denomination, another faith, or no faith at all, you are very welcome here because I think we can all share a love of the uncanny. Am I right? Today, during the writing of my book that is coming out on Tuesday, shameless plug, I'll put a link down below. The Devil in Dreamland, Catholic Faith, UFOs, the Occult, and the End of the Supernatural. I learned about a lot of things, really wild things that I was not aware of before, that are part of the entire UFO phenomena, or shall we say UFO deception. And I want to share with you today some information about one of those topics that I was completely in the dark about before I started working on the book. And it is about another book that has weaseled its way into Christianity and won over a lot of people, faithful followers, with its deception. And you may have seen someone carrying around a copy of this book, or maybe studying it at a Starbucks or reading it on the train as you go to work in the morning. The Urantia book has almost 250,000 copies in print, and it tops out at a whopping 2,097 pages. So it's hard to mistake this iconic light blue volume that has been staging no less than a Christian, or rather unchristian, anti-Christian revolution for almost 3/4 of a century. It was first published in 1935, and the Urantia Book's editor claimed that pages of it magically appeared in his desk drawer right here in Chicago, where I am. Though in reality, it seems that the book was largely channeled in the 1930s by a mysterious character known as the Sleeping Subject, whose identity would finally be revealed about 4 decades after this whole thing started to play out. The book is comprised of 196 messages given to humanity by these celestial beings from what they called a higher universe. And the book often reads like a thrilling sci-fi novel, no big surprise. You'll see in my book that the science fiction world is so closely tied to the UFO deception. It's deeply disturbing and very frightening. We've already talked about that on this channel. We'll talk about it definitely more in the weeks and months to come for sure. But the book is full of these tales of intergalactic government drama, planetary colonization, and other of these sort of cosmological adventures. The beings in the book have names like Melchizedek, Evening Star, and other biblical sounding names, and they're all involved in some way with us, Earthlings, and our planet Earth. But the Earth is really called Urantia, and that is where the Urantia book comes from. In fact, 1/3 of the book is devoted to our friend Jesus. And it shares all kinds of detail about Jesus's supposedly formative years of work, of studying and teaching before the New Testament accounts begin. So it's this bonus, information about Jesus, always red flag, right? Well, central to the Urantia teachings is a teaching that would thrill the alien-believing Catholic theologians that I talk about in my book, because the book's revelations include the so-called fact that there are many so-called creator sons of God, each of whom oversees his own universe. And there are more than 700,000 of these creator sons. And these are all incarnations of the eternal Son. In the book, this is the Son of the Holy Trinity, or actually one of 3 Trinities. Jesus is not our creator Son. Jesus was just one of 17 incarnations of our universe's creator Son. And that is the ultimate being known as the Michael of Nebadon. There comes that Michael name again. Like whenever we have this occult new age stuff, the name of Michael always appears. It's always this. They know if they use the name Michael that Catholics are going to be like, oh, Michael, yeah, we know him, right? He's the, defeater. He's the fighter against evil, but that's not who he is in the new age. But I digress. Pivotal to the teachings of the Urantia book is the revelation that Jesus did not have to die for humanity. The book teaches us that this belief was made up by St. Paul and has its roots in pagan beliefs that Paul picked up when he was in Tarsus. It says that Jesus was also born to an ordinary woman after she had sexual intercourse with a man, and so the virgin birth is a myth. The Urantia book is, in fact, seethingly opposed to the idea of Jesus's atonement, and we see that it's a particular anti-Catholic opposition to it, because not only Jesus's passion, but any equating of human suffering with goodness is violently attacked by the Urantia book. The book tells us, and this is a quote, the barbarous idea of appeasing an angry God, of propitiating an offended Lord, of winning the favor of deity through sacrifices and penance, and even by the shedding of blood, represents a religion wholly puerile and primitive. It is an affront to God to believe, hold, or teach that innocent blood must be shed in order to win his favor or divert the fictitious divine wrath, end quote. But lest Catholics feel singled out, we're just a bigger part of the problem because you see, it's all religion that's to blame for Earth's sad place toward the very bottom of all of the planets. And the Urantia book says that everything from worship to penance to prayer to even sin is rooted in what's called, quote, primordial ghost fear, end quote. So anything that's at all shows even awareness of a God, feeling guilty, feeling, repentance for sinning, feeling bad about doing something, feeling terrible about one's propensity to sin, trying to make up for that by doing penance, trying to make up for sin by doing good things or for denying oneself, believing, that Jesus died for us. These are all abominations according to the Urantia book. Now, it was a Seventh-day Adventist minister and psychologist who first assembled and published the Urantia book, and he was a Chicagoan. Dr. William Sadler was a professor at the University of Chicago in the early 1930s when he was approached by a neighbor concerned about her husband. She told Sadler that her spouse had developed a habit of falling into a deep sleep and speaking about what she called strange things. Sadler would discover that the strange things were very strange indeed. In fact, while unconscious, the man would become, in Sadler's words, quote, a sort of clearinghouse for the coming and going of alleged extraplanetary personalities, end quote. So these beings were like possessing and then leaving him, possessing and leaving him, and he was speaking. They were supposedly speaking through his body. Sadler found himself in a very difficult situation. Not only were the revelations of the sleeping subject next door astounding, but Sadler himself had spent the past decade actively debunking claims of the spiritualists and other occult practitioners that were very active at the time. And he actually wrote against them and even at one point assisted Harry Houdini, who was such a famed skeptic at the time, in his anti-spiritualism escapades. So Sadler had been actually working against spiritualism when he was confronted right in his face by this next door neighbor who was apparently channeling spirits. But Sadler found himself more intrigued than put off, and so he was delighted when the sleeping subject and he and his friends said that he and his friends could assemble a list of questions for these cosmic beings to answer. And so in the following months, these beings answered some 4,000 questions put to them by Sadler and his, professional doctor friends. The responses, which the sleeping subject's wife said were written in a single evening, filled almost 500 pages. Okay. So they had compiled 4,000 questions over the span of several months, and the sleeping subject, with the help of this channeling, um, answered them all in the course of one evening, he claimed. By 1935, Sadler had left the Seventh-day Adventists and his ministry against the spiritualist world, and he had plenty of time on his hands then when the entities told the sleeping subject that they wanted their body of knowledge to be published. And it took 20 years, but in 1955, the first printing of the Urantia book was complete. And it would be some 35 more years before the sleeping subject's identity would be revealed. Sadler had sworn to keep it under wraps, and he kept that secret for all of that time. Well-known skeptic Martin Gardner was under no such oath when, in 1991, he managed to affirm the sleeping subject to have been a man named Wilfred Custer Kellogg, Sadler's own brother-in-law. That's right. He was also a distant relative of the Seventh-day Adventist and breakfast cereal guru W.K. Kellogg. I don't know if you know this, but Kellogg was like kind of this weird, fringy guy who believed that eating a lot of breakfast cereal would, make you of optimum health and higher consciousness, one of that crowd. But anyway, he was related to him. So the sleeping subject, Gardner found out, had died in 1956, just a year after the book was published. And in identifying the sleeping subject, Gardner was able to piece together a few more parts of this Urantia puzzle. He found that the religious background of Kellogg and Sadler explained a lot of it because there were, as he noted, marked similarities between the corrections of Kellogg's ETs and those of the Seventh-day Adventists. So the same kind of things the Seventh-day Adventists said were wrong with the Christian faith were the same things that the ETs were saying was wrong with it, in large part. The Urantia book has won over significant swaths of Christianity of every denomination, including Catholics. They're attracted by this sort of easygoing and very unchristian teachings that want nothing to do with suffering or punishment or sin, right? Just as an aside, anecdotally, throughout my own career, I have encountered numerous teachers at every level, both in Catholic schools and secular schools, who were incorporating teachings from the Urantia book into their curriculum, including at Catholic RCIA and CCD classes. Some of these would not only have daily readings from the Urantia book, but also assignments for their students, Catholic students, from this crazy, goofy book. Now, the book combines devoutly Christian tenets, such as belief in one supreme God, the Trinity, although it's three Trinities, and so forth, and it combines these with New Age facets, and best of all, doing away with the idea of hell and everything that goes along with that. When we die, Urantia teaches us that cosmic messengers say that we simply go on to another world to keep learning and growing closer to God. So it's kind of like reincarnation, right? Everyone gets to go. There's no repentance necessary. It's just the next thing. It just happens. Many adherents of the Urantia teachings are also attracted by this hefty dose of scientific jargon, right, in its pages. The book is heavy on evolution, physics, consciousness theory, and other topics that are fascinating and validating to our age, which is STEM obsessed, right? The Urantia book has also inspired at least one UFO religion And it's actually one of the most notorious UFO cults that's operating today. It's under the leadership of a guy who calls himself Gabriel of Urantia. He was born in Pittsburgh as Tony Delavin, and he claims to be a spiritual healer who is the only, quote, audio fusion material complement on Earth. And he boasts what he says is a unique connection to these celestial beings written about in the book, or who delivered the book. He lives in southern Arizona, and he leads a group that follows his teachings, which were influenced by the Urantia book, which he considers to be divine revelations. He also considers his own writings to be divine revelations, um, in grand cult-like form, right? Cult leader form. The group has been mired in controversy for a long time. There have been a lot of reports of the very strict discipline, a lack of access to medical care, and this structure that puts Gabriel and his family over everybody else. So they're treated better. They have really nice living conditions while everyone else lives in squalor. They have great food. The everyone beneath them has to perform slave labor, essentially. Former members have also spoken out about the group's unquestionably cultish atmosphere, and they've shared intimate details about Delvin's control over people's personal lives and finances, which includes this unapologetic requirement to surrender everything you have to Gabriel and his family. Um, Gabriel will predict these apocalyptic events, such as the return of Jesus on a mothership spaceship. And he also says there's a forthcoming planetary evacuation, which he and his followers are preparing for. Like other UFO channelers that are active now, like Stephen Greer, Chris Bledsoe, I write about them on my book, and I've talked about them on this channel too. Gabriel also is big into this UFO summoning and channeling, and that's something that they that he regularly does with the cult. Now, there have been a lot of similarities revealed between the revelations of the Urantia book and the experiences of a Mexican UFO witness named Pablo Hanser. These experiences that Hanser had occurred in the early 2000s. He said he was walking to his home in Mexico City from a neighboring town when he was visited by a flying saucer piloted by what looked like humans. There was a string of communications that began at first by telephone. So he was getting messages from these extraterrestrials, ITC, right? I read all about this in my book, Instrumental Transcommunication and Messages from Spirits, people getting phone calls from spirits and things like that. This was what was happening here. It's identical. Hanser was receiving many messages about God, the earth or Urantia, humanity, and the nature, structure, and physical functioning of the universe. A lot of scientific messages. There's a scholar who wrote a paper about all of this, and it's called Alien Counters, the Theology of the Urantia Book, and the Origins of Human Consciousness. And it was written by a scholar named Dr. Valverde, and he hopes to not only show the similarities between the Urantia revelations and of Hanser's ETs, but it seems like he's drunk the Kool-Aid too, because he wants to expand the Urantia book to include the Hanser's clarifications of the origins of human consciousness as told to him by the ETs. So this scholar, meets Hanser. He starts listening to what he's saying, and he gets won over by it. And now he is not only writing scholarly papers about this whole thing, but he actually wants to change the book. So Valverde includes, as part of his research and this paper, and I'll put the link to that paper in the description if you want to read it, it talks about all of the experiences that Hanser had. And it has this chart that shows the similarities between what Hanser experienced and what is told in the Urantia book. So definitely check that out below. I hope this short analysis of this, an introduction to the Urantia book, if you have not heard about it before, is enough to make you put the cross fingers up if you see a copy of it. And please don't ever open this book. Don't read it, except to familiarize yourself with the lies and deceptions that are in it. And please, if you see someone else getting sucked into this deception of Urantia, let them know what you found out about this and just how diabolical and anti-Christian and specifically anti-Catholic it really is. It is a watered down, very watered down, washed out, completely inconceivable version of Christianity. It is not the truth. It has nothing to do with what really happened. What is that God was incarnate as Jesus of Nazareth, and he suffered and died to atone for our sins. And we suffer here on earth in union with him and do penance for our sin and for the sins of our fellow humans here on earth, which is decidedly not called Urantia. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I hope that you will like this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of it and if you're familiar with the Urantia book. And please like this video, share it with somebody, and subscribe to the channel because it really, really helps me to get my videos out to more people. That's what YouTube likes. And come visit me again next week here on Uncanny Catholic. Until then, I am Ursula Bielski. Remember to pray for ghosts. See you next time. Bye.